Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming and being here in such short notice, although I think we began sharing it quite late. This will hopefully be recorded and shared too. So what I wanted to basically do was to first introduce Beejom very briefly before I introduce Kartick and his work. Beejom is an agricultural natural farm based in Western UP. We do a lot of farming. We are also a small animal sanctuary where we have lots of domestic animals who live there here forever. And they are the core of our work, and they are because of whom we are able to farm and do natural farming. So in our journey in the last 9 years, we have learned a lot, encountered a lot, and now we are constantly trying to bring and share these learnings. And today we actually have a wonderful person doing amazing work in the field of wildlife to discuss this really lovely topic and very, very crucial topic on agrarian spaces and wildlife. Why I decided to talk about this is, even as we farm on our farmlands, and we are a natural farm, and we practice integrative natural farming where we integrate wildlife and nature, we also find it sometimes very hard to deal with wildlife issues on the farm. And over a period, we've learned to sensitize ourselves, sensitize the people who work with us, people around us. And Wildlife SOS has been quite crucial in helping us at many times. So today, because it's also becoming more and more of a problem, the agrarian space is as it is beset with challenges. We already know, from climate change to every possible problem is already there. But over and above that, one that is really growing silently is the man-animal conflict. It's because of the large fragmentation, development, encroachment, lack of wildlife buffer zones, habitats, whatever. So this conflict is only increased, and we are constantly trying to see how to do the best for both communities as a nation. So I'm going to now ask Kartick to introduce himself, tell us something about Wildlife SOS, and when did you start the organization, and what made you create this lovely organization?
Well, first of all, Aparna, I must thank you for having me on this Insta Live. It's lovely to be collaborating on this space because, India is an agricultural community. I mean, our farmers make our country move. And it's really important that we help them address these issues. And so it's great that you brought all of these people together. And thank you for having me. I'd like to very briefly introduce Wildlife SOS. So for all of you out there, for those of you who don't know, Aparna and I have known each other for, almost 20 years and probably more. And we share a common passion, both Aparna and her husband Sai and the whole family, all the children and us. We all share a common passion, which is to protect and conserve wildlife and animals. And I created Wildlife SOS in 1995, and my co-founder Geeta Seshamani and I started this organization a long time ago, in a garage in Delhi. And basically, the goal was to try and make a difference to people, to the country, to communities around us, and to try and help people understand how they could coexist with nature, with wildlife, with the ecosystem around them, and how they could, be a part of it while accepting and being more tolerant as well. So that was the goal. But, initially when we started out, we started working with communities that were using bears, endangered species of bears for dancing called the sloth bears. And we took a very different approach to try and help them find alternative livelihoods instead of criminalizing them, and helping them find ways of supporting themselves, and then helping them hand over those bears in a peaceful way to the forest department, so that those bears could then be rehabilitated and the people had a better quality of life as well. And then we moved on to establish many centers. Wildlife SOS also established India's first elephant hospital an elephant conservation and care center. We have rescue centers for leopards, tigers, etc. But the most important work that I believe we do is to help address human-wildlife conflict on a daily basis. Almost every single day, we're dealing with this. Whether it's farmers or urban spaces, this is something that I think will always be there, and it's going to only spiral more and more in the future. And so primarily that's what we do. And I think we should dive in and start, talking about this issue, which is a very, very important issue close to my heart, because if we can help people address these issues, I think we can make the world a better place.
Wonderful. In fact, when I'm going to take the first question, a cue from what you were saying. What kind of situations?
I'm losing you. I'm losing your audio.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, but only half your face is visible.
Okay, so I'm not good with technology, you know that. So, okay, so what kind of man-animal conflict situations do you usually encounter at Wildlife SOS, both in urban and rural spaces? And sometimes we are now living in semi-urban rural suburbs as well, where we encounter them in very special ways. And how are the situations different in these spaces? Why don't you tell us some stories?
Okay.
That illustrate.
We deal with human wildlife conflict on a daily basis without fail. I think we probably receive about 30 to 40 phone calls every single day where people are reporting conflict of some nature. It could be rural, like you said, where a leopard has gone into an agricultural field. It's a sugarcane field, and it's gone in there, and it's littered. It's got cubs. The farmers suddenly come there for harvesting, and he's found that in the middle of his harvest, his tractor is stopped because he finds 4 leopard cubs in the middle of his field. Now that's going to interrupt his harvest, but he's also worried. But typically, I think every farmer innately is kind and compassionate, and they don't want to hurt these animals. So they try to find a solution, and sometimes moving those cubs is probably what comes to mind immediately, but that might not necessarily be the best solution, because a leopard mother is going to be around and she's very protective. This is when a conflict occurs. It's a perfect recipe for a conflict situation. So when we get a call like this from the forest department or from the farmers or the local community, that's when our team gets there. We assess the situation. Is the mother dead? Is that why she's not around? Or has she fallen into a well? Is that why the cubs are, abandoned? Or is it that she's just scared because when the harvest starts, there's lots of machines, lots of people in the fields. She gets scared. She's not able to approach the cubs again. So sometimes just moving those cubs away or pausing the harvest for maybe a day or even a few hours would help. So in most cases, what we do, I'll give you an example of what typically is done. And you can actually go to the Wildlife SOS YouTube and see some of these videos where these cubs are put back. So we try to reunite these cubs back with the mother, because the farmers also support us in doing this, making it happen. So we collect these cubs, check them quickly, make sure they're fine, they're not dehydrated, they can survive for a few hours. And then once that is done, then we place them in a box and we put them back in the same place. And sometimes we have to, collect the urine and smear it around the box to make sure that the mother knows where she's got to come to find the cubs. And she comes back to the same place. We wait there, a little distance away, and we put infrared cameras to make sure that the mother's coming in collecting these cubs. And then typically in about a few hours, the first night, the female will come back, take the cubs, and go away. Now, this is a way by which you mitigate the conflict. Yeah. The cubs are reunited with the mother. The mother is not angry or upset with the farmers for having deprived her of her cubs or taking her cubs away from her. And the farmer can go back to his harvest. Right. And there is a very good chance that that mother, because her cubs were disturbed here, she will not come back to that field again, probably to litter. So that way, everybody's happy. It's a win-win for everyone. Nobody's harmed, nobody's injured. The cubs are back with the mother, and the farmers farmer can get back to his harvest. So this is the kind of a rural conflict situation that we very often deal with. But on the other hand, we have a contrast where we have urban conflict situations as well, where, for example, we get a call from somebody, because we have to remember that all of our apartment blocks or housing societies or factories were not so long ago jungles or natural rural spaces or farmland, which is where these animals thrive. That's where they were made. I mean, that's where they evolved to be. And so as a result, every factory, so we have calls from the airport saying, we've got monkeys inside the cargo hold, or there's a civet cat inside a plane, or a snake inside, the escalator, or something like that. We also get calls from apartments where people say, well, why are there snakes around my apartment? And you have a cobra on the 7th floor apartment in somebody's toilet. So, we have to then wrangle that situation, but at the same time explain to them that these were rural spaces. So you can't really imagine a place devoid of all life.
Yeah.
So these are the kind of conflict situations that we have to deal with, elephants going into crop fields, nilgai entering situations like that, where they get into the crops. And so these are we have such a huge range of conflict situations that we have to deal with. In some cases, we can address it immediately. In some cases, it's not possible to address a long-term solution right away. But I think no problem is unsolvable. And I think every problem has a solution, and all we need to do is come together, put our heads together, and we have a solution for everything. Between the government, the farming community, people like Beejom, and Wildlife SOS, we can all come together and produce solutions.
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
It answers my question. Also, I'm also thinking the leopard incident. How many farmers would know what to do in a situation like that? So that's how much awareness that needs to be built. Because honestly, if farmers did encounter wildlife, they wouldn't know what to do. They wouldn't even know whom to call. And so it's very, very important that we kind of start, kind of disseminating this information and educating farmers. This is a very important aspect. So I'm really glad we're doing this today.
Aparna, you mentioned about farmers not knowing what to do. This is a very important aspect that you just touched upon, because it's important for us to know how to behave in that situation.
Yeah.
So if you're not aware of how to behave in that situation, you can do something that's inappropriate in that particular. For example, when you have a leopard situation with those cubs, to be alone by yourself or one or two farmers trying to handle the cubs is the most dangerous thing to do. That's definitely not something you should do. When they see cubs in a field, then you step away, report it to the forest department, report it to the police, or contact Wildlife SOS or Beejom, so that we can then get the right authorities or the right people to get there.
And advise them about what steps to take.
Correct.
Very often, because they find cubs and they think they're not dangerous, locals try to do something on their own, intervene, even sometimes are violent with all get together to try and kill a wild animal, or it could be anything, and I think that actually backfires on them rather than helping the situation.
In fact, and usually what happens is when you corner an animal, because they think they're trying to contain it, but for the animal, it's going to look like it's being cornered.
Yes.
So a leopard or a bear or a tiger or an elephant, any of these, or even a big cat, any of the other big cats will all feel cornered. And that's when they feel that they have to, protect themselves to escape. All they're trying to do is escape. So sometimes just making way, if the crowd moves apart, crowd control can sometimes be a solution to mitigate.
Absolutely. Yeah. And now with the latest craze with putting everything, taking videos, and I think the situation gets extremely unmanageable, and that's exactly the wrong kind of situation for us to be able to even do a rescue. In fact, what we encounter most, I think, in farmlands, not so much the big cats and elephants, which are always there, but snakes. every single day, especially in the season, which is the monsoon season. Especially in the north, it's the monsoon. I think in the south, it's all year round because it's always warm. We are always encountering snakes every day. And I will begin with my experience at Beejom and how Wildlife SOS has helped us. Initially, when we started farming, I knew already that I love animals, and I had been talking a lot to Kartick, and so I was already familiar with snakes and how to react to a snake or how to handle a snake where possible. But not so the people who started working with us, and the immediate reaction used to be kind of a loud, war cry, and everybody would produce their lathis, and a whole battlefield would kind of develop, and everybody would run towards the snake which will be 500 yards away, and they didn't even ask what snake it was. The snake was of no threat to them, but the immediate reaction was to try and kill the snake. And from beginning there today, thanks to our dedicated efforts to educate the farming community within and around us, I think at Beejom safely, all of them have become conservationists. And that's the credit goes to Wildlife SOS, because we've had so many occasions where we've every single time called Wildlife SOS. They have come here, they have explained what snake it is, why it is poisonous or non-poison, venomous, non-venomous. In fact, that's something you should tell us about, and what its bite can do. How do we help ourselves? Told us how to protect ourselves, and so the whole community is educated today, which is wonderful. So much so, the other day inside our work area, the ladies were working, and one of the ladies, a snake fell on her head. It should be actually the most shocking thing to happen to someone. So I come into the farm an hour later, and they casually informed me that a snake fell on her head. And I can't imagine this conversation, 9 years ago. So they said, no, it was a common wolf snake, nothing. So it just showed what education, awareness, and sensitization can do to an environment. So I would like to ask you, they are most probably the most feared and worshipped animals in India, both, and also the most common. So, what kind of calls do you get, and what would you tell us about types of snakes and which are venomous, which are poisonous? What's the difference between a venomous and a poisonous snake? How can we help farmers understand how to prevent, an encounter, a snake bite? And if something like that happens, there are so many myths and misinformation around this. How do we ensure that the right first aid and the right kind of treatment gets to them?
Well, firstly, thank you for your kind words about having Wildlife SOS come over and intervene for your snake calls. And I think it's such a urgent need for us to help people understand how helpless snakes are. So people sadly they are feared, which is really something that I don't understand. But I think we have to credit Bollywood, maybe a lot of our movies,
That's true.
perhaps for creating fear in people's minds.
Yeah.
But I think evolutionarily also, we
Myths too.
primates
Huh.
always been fearful of reptiles, large reptiles, because we see them as predators. But most people sometimes don't realize that snakes don't have any hearing, they have no ears. And imagine if you and I didn't have arms or legs and we had to walk on our ribs, how helpless we'd be, right? And if we had poor vision. So India has over 270 species of snakes. And when we look at the venomous versus non-venomous, first of all, I think it's important to understand what venom is. Venom is primarily, concentrated protein, which enables these venomous snakes to find their prey. So if a cobra or a viper or a crate is looking for prey, they find a rat or a frog or a bird, whatever they are looking for, which is how they're evolved to eat that prey. We don't fall under their diet plan. We are not on the menu, really. So these reptiles basically bite the rat or the frog or whatever, and then inject that venom, which is highly concentrated protein. And then that animal then starts, it gets sedated, kind of anesthetized, and then dies. And then the snake can find that prey and then swallow it head first, typically. That is what this venom is made for. It's a digestive, it aids the digestive process for the snake. But sadly, the human, anatomy doesn't do well with some of that venom. So there is hemotoxic venom, there's neurotoxic venom, and there's cytotoxic venom. That's unfortunately causes, us to have, if you get bitten, we can react unfavorably. And, we can, if you get to a hospital, you can get help. And you can easily get antivenom serum. It's called AVS. And you can keep that, in most places at room temperature or in the refrigerator, and use that in case of an emergency. But in most cases, it's so easy to avoid getting bitten by a snake. You can avoid encounters just by knowing a little bit more about snakes. Snakes are, in fact, the farmer's best friends. Snakes are the perfect biological controlling device for rodent control. And I'm sure most farmers know this, that they probably lose between 15 to 20% of their grain crop to rodents, because every field has rodent holes all around it. And in these burrows, in fact, there's a community in Tamil Nadu called Irulas who actually hunt rats. And when they hunt rats, they also dig up the burrows and they find huge caches of grain that's stored there by the rats. And they are able to harvest that, and they use that as grain for themselves as well. So it's really important for farmers to see the snakes as a tool to protect their crops, rather than as something that needs to be killed because it's dangerous. Because most of the snakes that get killed are probably non-venomous snakes that are only helping the farmer protect his crops. And so when you see a snake, typically, I know there is this extreme reaction that most people have, but the right way to behave would be to just observe it, step away, step back. And then when you walk in your fields or walk in agricultural areas or in rural areas, always best to wear proper protective footgear, like shoes or, hard sandals or something like that, so that you're not exposing yourself to an accidental bite. If the snake doesn't notice you're coming and you step on it, obviously to protect itself, it has nothing else. It doesn't have hands to say, you're stepping on me, please move away. Only facility that the snake has is teeth. So the only thing it can do is kind of bite and let you know that it's hurting or you've stepped on it. So the best way is to just avoid snakes, observe them, move away. And if the snake is in a place where you need to move it away, all you need to do is use a wire hanger, a coat hanger. Straighten it out, make a hook at the end, just pick up the snake with one end, and then just walk away with it and drop it at the other side. And most snakes will not really come for you, because they are probably 10,000 times more scared of us than we are of them.
I think it also helps when you use a stick to, when you walk around, to keep beating it on the ground.
You can use a walking stick to kind of create a little vibration in some cases, but it's very easy to avoid snakes and not be surprised by them. But if you see a snake, I think the best reaction is not to be horrified, but to just understand, but look at them with different eyes. I
also tell the guys on the farm, always this is what we do. We keep our farm pretty clean, in terms of rubble, and if such things have to be piled, it's piled up in a dedicated place, so that we can avoid, your situations where it's very close to where people live or work. And so naturally then, and we invariably, whenever we pick up a large pile of hay, if we are cleaning it, or bricks, we do find snakes. So when
that's where they are. And why are snakes drawn to farmlands? Why are snakes drawn to rubble piles? Because that's where the rodents come and hide. Rats and mice go in and hide there. And rats and mice are the ones who come to the crop fields. So the snakes are not after the farmers, the snakes are not after the crops or interested in the fields, they're simply interested in the rats.
Yeah.
And interested in the frogs. That's all.
In the frogs, in the monsoon, we have large toads on the farm. They're beautiful.
Correct.
And yeah, this is what I wanted to also say, that we practice natural farming, for instance, and the idea is to farm with nature. So that means having the good, bad, and ugly all with you all the time, you know. And so we have so many toads and frogs. It's wonderful in monsoon. You can hear them all. It's like a rock show at night. But this also means we have loads of snakes. And a couple of months ago, we were so pleased. I found a Russell's viper on my farm. Pleased because I have never seen one, live. I had only seen one in pictures. So I was also able to identify one spot on the minute I saw one from far away. So I was very pleased. So I think it also has helped me, Kartick, that I've taken the trouble from being somebody who didn't know anything about snakes to understand how to identify snakes. At least that's something that's very, very crucial for me to know. What does my farm contain? What are the snakes that roam around on my farm? Is it usually crates? You know, people ask questions like, oh, they see a common black snake, and all black snakes are cobras. It's a common perception. And so if I ask anybody who's not very knowledgeable, kya samp tha? Says kala samp. So it was a black snake, and any black snake is poisonous. So I think, yeah, this is really at many levels, this is really important that we learn to identify and know how to protect ourselves from snakes.
I think one of the other things, since you mentioned Russell's viper, important, maybe to also let the audience who are here with us understand that Russell's viper can sometimes be mistaken by the untrained eye to look like a python. And people might say, it's a non-venomous snake, let's just catch it, or something like that.
Yeah.
But please remember, Russell's viper is very venomous.
Very swift and very swift.
And a python is not venomous.
Yeah.
And there is
even
also
the
something called a Russell's boa.
Sorry?
Something called a Russell's boa.
Okay.
Which is a smaller version, again non-venomous, but will not hesitate to bite.
Yeah.
So all of these three snakes will bite if handled in the improper way.
Yeah.
But only one is venomous. So maybe in one of our future Insta lives we can possibly discuss,
types of snakes and stuff. Like,
the
confusion between a python and a boa, confusion between wolf and crate. I think there are common misconceptions. No, we can, at least get people to identify. Yeah. And also many misconceptions. We wouldn't be able to do all that in this program, but the myths that surround snakes and the number of beliefs that are there around them, it's quite incredible.
A lot of people believe that, rat snakes are venomous. They go and drink milk from the cow's udder, things like that. So I think these kind of things, people can try and, understand that these are myths. There's nothing but, stories, because there is no truth to it at all. And, snakes cannot drink milk. They cannot process milk. They just cannot even digest it. But yes, if they are very dehydrated and you keep a bowl of milk in front of them, they'll probably drink it because it's a liquid for them. It's not because they're drinking milk. So a lot of people, see that, if a snake is drinking milk, then it's accepting it, or they bring a religious connotation to that. But it's important for people to perhaps understand that, anybody who's thirsty and dehydrated will consume anything that is liquid in nature.
Right. Yeah. That's one of the things. What can snakes drink? They don't do dairy at all. We know that snakes don't drink milk, so it's pretty logical. But yes, people would not even believe it because of the main. Apart from snakes, of course, the principal culprits responsible for human-animal conflict in the agrarian spaces are primates, rodents, and ungulates, which are antelopes, wild boars, and elephants, and tigers, and lions, and all that. But I don't know if people really know, especially the farming agrarian community, what the laws are. That in India, that we have wonderful laws that are actually, maybe some of the best in the world to protect wildlife and wildlife habitats. So how important is it for people to know these laws, and what are the kinds of laws that are there? If you could tell us.
Of course. India, actually has a very progressive law called the Wildlife Protection Act of 1972, which basically bans the hunting or killing or maiming of any wild animal. So, people should know that if they kill a snake or a bird or even remove a nest or kill bees or destroy a beehive or, kill or trap or snare or injure any kind of an animal, technically it's illegal in India. You can only kill, hunt, or trap an animal if you have the permission, a written permission from the chief wildlife warden of the state that you're in, whichever state that you want to do that incident or hunt that animal or whatever. That basically means that every animal is protected in India. Yes, in some states, the state government and the state forest department has declared certain animals as being overly harmful to crops, and they might give permissions to, maybe cull animals quickly in some states. But in most states, this is not permitted. So it's very important for farmers to know that in order to protect their crops, if they take some steps or take the law into their hands, they could get in trouble with the law. So it is better to report such crop issues, if they're having crop depredation by elephants, for example, or crop depredation by wild boar or nilgai. All they have to do is file a report with the local state department. The local DFO will send a range officer to come and inspect the crop loss that has been that has occurred, and they will actually give compensation to the farmer. The farmer can get compensated for the crop loss that he's got, which is a safer way to go about it, rather than try
take
to
matters into your own hands.
Exactly. I've heard of so many incidents where farmers have gone to drive a bear out of their field without realizing that they've accidentally come between the bear and her cubs. And the bear mother is only protective, and all she's seeing is, this man is between me and my cubs. My cubs can't come to me. I can't go to the cubs. So she ends up attacking the person to defend her cubs. It's just protective behavior. Same things have happened with leopards and elephants, etc. So there is this system that a lot of people are not aware that there's a lot of money that the government of India invests in giving crop compensation to people, because they value the role that farmers play, and they value the fact that when people live on forest fringes, there is this risk of wild animals that will enter your farms and you will lose some crop to them. So the system exists, and I think the system needs to be utilized better.
For loss of life, I think the government gives you 5 lakhs per...
It's state-wise. So in some states, it's 10 lakhs. In some states, it's 5 lakhs. It can even be much more, depending on what happens. But again, here we're talking about human lives. It's a very serious matter. We don't want people to lose their lives. And the best way to do that is to know the species that you're going to be in conflict with. For example, in Chhattisgarh, a lot of farmers, and in Karnataka, a lot of farmers have a conflict with wild elephant herds that come into their farms. And the farmers who understand how that it's safer that you're indoors, you don't go out when an elephant herd is inside your fields. If you know they're coming, then go beforehand and make a lot of noise with your, get some utensils and get some drums, make a lot of noise. The herd will just go away. They'll avoid you altogether because they want to come in undetected. Quietly eat your crops and go away. But if you end up trying to go in there and confront them yourselves, there is a likelihood that they will chase you because they are scared. And you can never run as fast as an elephant, and you will get outrun, and you could possibly get injured or even possibly lose your life. So it's
as an aside, how do you run away from an elephant?
Well, I think better to not get into that situation where you have to run. But if you absolutely have to run, you have to run like crazy and try to, drop a piece of clothing or something where the elephant usually, because if the elephant is mad at you or upset with you, your smell on a piece of clothing will distract it, and you'll buy a few minutes while it's destroying that, and you can get away. So best to, get into a building or as far as...
Because I think usually this happens in Wayanad and even Bengal. There is a large number of deaths by elephants, and both in Bengal and Kerala. So I often wonder, if you do encounter this tusker in the jungle or in the fringe, if a farmer or even communities that live in the fringes, what are your experiences with them? I mean, I'm just asking you this because it just came up in my head. There are the communities that live, tribal communities that live in these zones that are close to the jungle or in buffer zones. Uh, how do they work or live with wildlife, and what are the problems they have?
So I'll give you an example to tell you what kind of work we do and how these communities have to grapple with the situation. I'm talking about the Central Indian state called Chhattisgarh, which was carved out of Madhya Pradesh. Now that state did not have elephants for a very long time, maybe about 10 decades or so. But suddenly, a few years ago, they started seeing a lot of human fatalities because of one herd primarily, and then several other herds entered. So they came in from Orissa into this state because there was some disturbance of the natural corridor because of some coal mines or something like that, and they entered Chhattisgarh. So now that they were in Chhattisgarh, people there did not know how to behave around elephants. They had never seen elephants before. So they'd kind of go there, take selfies, get trampled by elephants. So there were over 90 human fatalities in a very short period of time. That was very shocking. So the Forest Department of Chhattisgarh collaborated with us. They invited us to come and assess the situation. We signed an MOU with them. We went there, studied the whole situation. We had to do a lot of research to understand the nature of the conflict and how widespread it was. Finally, Wildlife SOS was able to follow the herd and then install a GPS collar on the matriarch, the female who leads the herd. And by installing this one collar, it actually helped us create an early warning alert system by which we knew beforehand on a device, on your computer or your phone, you could actually see the movement of the herd. And you could predict that the herd was, 2.5 kilometers from this village, 1.8 kilometers from so-and-so village, and 3 kilometers from Y village. And through a radio system that the Forest Department had already installed, they were able to announce to those villages in time that this is how far the herd is from your location, so you need to prepare for that. And we helped the Forest Department, we assisted the Forest Department in creating local groups. So we were able to go and do a lot of awareness in these villages by which youngsters got together and they all created WhatsApp groups on their phones. And then we could alert them that this is the location where the elephants are. So please be alert. And they'd get, the entire community would come out of the village, come to around the cropping area. Because, typically in villages, the crop fields are all together and the residential area of the village is somewhere else. They're not necessarily together.
Not attached, yeah.
So they would go to the crop fields and make a lot of noise and all that. And the herd would just divert and go off into the forest and not come into the crop fields. So that early warning alert system saved a lot of human lives. But it all goes down to marrying technology with understanding elephant behavior or ecological behavior of that species. At the same time, making sure that the community is empowered, the local communities are made aware, educated about this behavior and how to behave in that situation.
Absolutely.
That can keep them alive, safe, and help them protect their crops as well.
So this really just calls for a lot of awareness programs and spade work at that level, so that we can avert a lot of these situations. Like, we have specific wildlife issues in various parts of India. We have monkeys in Uttarakhand, which we all know, it's famous now. I think Uttarakhand is reeling under a monkey problem. What do you think has caused that problem, and what do you think are the solutions?
Monkeys are only one step behind human beings. So they are almost as clever as we are. And they learn to adapt very fast. So once monkeys realized that their forests were all disappearing, their source of food and nutrition was natural habitat, which sadly has been replaced by a concrete jungle that is man's creation. We created concrete jungles. So effectively, in some way, we have taken away their habitat and replaced it with concrete jungles. So they have had to learn to adapt. Instead of climbing on trees and drinking water out of water hole in the forest,
waterfall or a hole. Yes, yes.
they
Yeah.
have learned to live amidst apartments and concrete blocks in markets and go to temples, and
Become scavengers also.
they are only looking for food,
Yes.
right? Primarily, that's all their instinct is. You know, they want to look for food and they want to look for a place where they can protect themselves. But because in urban spaces there are no predators, in the jungle, leopards, wolves, jackals, wild dogs, all and pythons kill monkeys. So there is a natural system, population control system in place in a natural environment. But because that natural environment and that ecosystem has been replaced by humans, and now we've got an urban, concrete jungle over there,
Yes.
we've done away with the predators.
Yes.
So these monkeys do not have any predators, so there is no natural compensation for their population growth. And
I think this
monkeys
is where
have
people
learned.
have. Yeah, I think we've
Monkeys
also.
have
This is very.
learned
Sorry.
monkeys have learned to get into apartments, find food. They've learned to open refrigerators, and they've become and when you look at a monkey in the eye, it's seen, the primate sees it as a challenge. So a lot of people don't realize that. All you have to do is look away, and an animal is going to be disarmed immediately. But because of this, they have learned that human beings generate a lot of rubbish and trash and food waste. So they have learned that if we stick to human beings and human populations, we will always have food, because humans eat 3 times a day, and they will always have food waste to throw away, and we can eat from that. So that, in a way, and when they have abundance of food available, they reproduce. Their reproduction rate also increases. So as a result, you have a lot of monkeys, yes, but there are ways that you can manage their population, and other countries like Hong Kong have done it sustainably in a humane, scientific way, and India has also tried it in some states. It does work, but it will require some effort, concentrated effort, and a scientific approach to do that.
I was just going to ask you that, this constant feeding of monkeys in urban spaces, where we do it out of people do it out of a sense that they think either it's holy, or they think they feel bad for the monkey, or they love monkeys. It could be various reasons. In tourist places, where monkeys have become kind of scavengers, So how can we educate people, or what should be done?
I think people need to understand that when you see, monkeys are primarily wild animals. They're actually listed in the Wildlife Protection Act in one of the schedules. So it's really important that we not take away their natural instinct. When you feed an animal repeatedly, you condition that animal or that species or that population to understand that, okay, this is an easy way of finding food. I don't need to go climb 15 trees to get one fruit out of each tree, or a few nuts from each place, or dig in the ground for tubers, or roots or things like that. It's all about energy expansion. So they spend energy to gather food and nutrition. But whereas if we feed them, or human beings feed them, or at a temple, or whatever reason it is, then they don't have to spend that energy. They realize that this is much more profitable energy-wise. They spend less energy to gain more nutrition. Whereas, that is why there's crop raiding. That's why monkeys or other animals end up coming into crop fields, because it's a concentrated area of nutrition that's available, which they can easily access very quickly without expending much energy. That is really the crux of the matter. So if we feed monkeys, or people feed monkeys, you will train these monkeys without doubt to become more and more dependent on people, and less independent and less able to survive on their own. And so we are definitely creating a problem for ourselves.
And thanks to the monkey issue, there is this new thing saying get a langur to drive away the monkeys. So that's become a kind of a business where people come in. The langur guy comes with his langur, and many people use langurs. I know this happens more in urban spaces, but I'm just raising this because I've seen this happen so often, and I've seen one or two places where the langur died because he was attacked by dogs. He was tied to a tree.
Langurs are also protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. So anybody who catches a langur, keeps it on a chain, and brings it for such services, is definitely breaking the law, and it's a 7-year jail sentence if somebody is caught with a langur, between 3 and 7 years if the guy is convicted. So it's definitely not a good way. It's a very, very temporary solution. But it's also, remember, it's important to know that these langurs are captured from the wild, stolen from their mothers at a very young age, and then trained using very brutal techniques. So we are breaking multiple laws by encouraging someone to bring a langur to drive away monkeys. It would be better for us to stop feeding monkeys. Perhaps that's one way to do it. And the other way to do it is to inform the forest department. Maybe they could relocate that troop of monkeys if they're becoming too much of a menace in certain areas. But this will have to be done, through the due process of the law, where the chief wildlife warden of the state gets involved and then provides a solution for this.
In farming communities who ask me, what do we do because monkeys have kind of invaded our space, like in Uttarakhand, I always suggest changing crop patterns. So
That's a great idea, Aparna.
You have to work around the problem, right? So I tell them, if you can't grow, grain anymore or any legume, which they will pluck and eat, then grow turmeric, which they will not touch, right?
Correct.
And turmeric grows very well there. Then I also tell them grow herbs. Herbs is something monkeys don't touch at all. Ginger, turmeric, herbs, and all these things can be grown. So from being this, our farm is constantly looking at opportunities to see what else can you grow, so that we can give them solutions that are more practical. Driving away the monkeys, I don't know how effective it will be in a short term, as a short term solution. So I think we should also look at things everywhere, like changing crop patterns, creating biofences. We also, on our farm, we had a problem with birds, for instance, because we grow only organic food. It's very interesting. The next guy, his bajra will have not a single bird on it. All the bajra will be in our field. The birds will be in our bajra. Obviously, even the bird knows which is the better grain, right? And so we tried at various stages, various things. We had this clapping system, this clapboard which they use for races. In our schools, they used to use these. So we brought that first. Then we brought a bell and a dong kind of thing to, Then we said, who'll sit and now, beat the dong the whole day? So we created this contraption where we use a cycle pedal and to hit against a thali, a steel plate, just because of the wind movement. So it cost no energy. We just hung it on a pole. Only problem was whole night and day it would go dang, dang, dang. So we've tried all sorts of methods and yelling. Two of our elderly farmers would go hoarse every time our harvest was ripening, because so then we started growing separately for them, one patch. So they stay out of our patch. So I think constantly, yes, there are challenges, and there are lovely ways now that in farming where they say that, for instance, nilgai hate castor. So suppose I'm growing arhar, which nilgai love. You should know that most of Western UP now doesn't grow arhar because of nilgai. You ask any farmer, why aren't you growing arhar? One of his most popular excuses is that there are too many nilgais, I can't grow. But one of the nice things to do is grow 3 layers of rows of castor around the arhar. Apparently, the smell of castor repels the nilgai and it can't reach the arhar. The smell of the arhar doesn't get to it. Similarly, groundnut crops, you can border it with safflower. Safflower is thorny, and again, it has a repulsive smell. So I'm trying to see what kind of crop combinations we can do to naturally help keep some of these at bay, to help farmers, So we have to keep reinventing ourselves too, because the climate is changing, ecosystems are changing, biodiversity is changing, everything is changing. So I think we also have to start changing the way we grow and do things. Yeah.
I think, like you mentioned, it's a good way to look at the whole solution. If you can change cropping patterns to find, and it's all available out there. And in some cases, the cropping pattern might actually benefit the farmer much more.
Correct.
Because the revenue from that crop.
Yes.
Like ginger
both safflower and castor will give him revenue. Correct. Yes.
So you might actually have the farmer might be on a better winning wicket if
Yes.
if he modifies his cropping pattern to
Yeah.
prevent the animals from finding anything lucrative in his fields, and then they
Yeah.
won't have any interest. The other thing is to use some technology, like you said, scarecrows and things that can keep the
Biofences and mechanical, I mean, no, not mechanical, what do you call them? Electric fences and
solar
stuff.
powered, yeah, solar powered fencing. Also, a very cheap way to keep monkeys, nilgai, wild boar, etc. outside. But the important thing to know is if you know the animal behavior, then you've got to configure the fence lines in a
In such
way
a
that
way.
yeah. So if you configure it in a way that when the animal comes to the fence, it immediately comes in contact with these lines, and the animals learn that okay, this is not a very welcoming place, so and they go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But with monkeys, the challenge is they will find ways to climb over, find a tree to
Yes.
jump over and come in. So you will have to make sure that there are no trees or branches that go over the fence.
Overlapping. Yes, yes. And even canopies, they're saying create your canopy in such a way that one doesn't overlap over the other, that then they, kind of get ahead. Yeah. In fact, we had a lot of, there were some very sad situations we've had in the last 2-3 years. A lot of farmers have started using blade wires in a desperate attempt to protect their crops. These blade wires have caused so much damage to wildlife and even cattle, stray cattle. We actually had a case of a wild bull, no, not a stray bull, who got caught in these blade wires. And we found him with deep gashes along his chest and sides. And we started treating him. And he began to come to our farm, because then he realized these are really nice people and we were very flattered. And then we started feeding him at our gate, and he started walking in. And eventually, this was literally like the Arab and the camel story. He landed up at our kitchen and started grabbing the chapatis. And that's when we said, okay, now you come in. And all the animals compulsorily do their own little bit on the farm. So we said, now let's train you to do some work because it's good for you. And absolutely stray sand, which is an uncastrated bull, today happily pulls boogies. All his wounds have healed. So that gave us an idea of what animals go through, because blade tars are again, or blade wires are something that people now use. It's the worst version of a fence. So we are trying to encourage people to, grow a thorny cactus and stuff, biofences, or like you said, solar electric fences, or sometimes even barbed wires work for some animals.
I'd like to suggest that
Huh.
the government of India
Huh.
and the Ministry of Agriculture, etc., actually provide subsidy to farmers for using
Yes.
solar
Solar
fencing.
fencing. Yes.
So I think sometimes just the farmer reaching out to the local NABARD banks, National Agricultural and Rural Development Banks, can
Yeah.
actually provide up to 70 to 80% subsidy. So the
Subsidies to
farmer
this.
can,
Yes.
for such fencing. So rather than use something that's harmful to the
Harmful. Yeah.
animals, to people, and can also get the farmer in trouble, because the laws protect these animals as well. It would be more prudent for the farmer to approach the government and the banks to get a subsidy for installing something that is top of the line technology, which will sustain
Absolutely.
his farm in the long run.
Yeah. What do you know about sensors and all, Kartick? Do they work? I don't know what you call them, but sensors to, sound sensors that imitate predators. I think things there is some technology that's come up. Is it
Correct,
there in
but
India?
I would say yes. They use this a lot, primarily in North America, to attract prey or to repel prey, depending on what they want to do. But I think it might not be sustainable in the scale of our agriculture
Our
that is here.
agriculture, right?
So these sensors might not necessarily. I mean, but of course, I could be wrong, and maybe there are new things that are out there that could be utilized. Because a lot of people say, oh, there's this sensor, you put it in the middle of your field and no snakes will come. I don't believe that.
No, neither
I
do I.
doubt it will be effective
No.
at all in any. It's
No,
probably a good way to spend your money.
traditionally our farmers dug trenches. If it was an heavy animal area like elephants and bisons and nilgai, then they would dig big trenches to prevent animals coming in. or they would put a very thick, thorny hedge around, and stuff like that. But I think mostly what I really do appreciate about uh, our country is that we do try and live as much as possible with what we have around us. I think whether it's our laws, and even in the farming community, I've noticed a great sense of acceptance, which is sad for them, but really kind of them. Where most farmers say, "This is how it is. We have a lot of Neel guys, so we don't grow our hair." I think it's pretty gentle, and which is really nice. But it would be nice to give them solutions so that they don't suffer it also, which is what the objective is. There is so much relocation conversations about relocation, and I think it has been tried many times, and these conversations have gone on. There have been some examples like the Gir example. Could you elaborate on this? How does relocation work for wild animals, and how do we do this? Is it
So
even advisable?
relocation can be done in some cases. For example, I mean, if you have, a big herd of nilgai and they've been there for a while, they're going to get into trouble sooner or later, and because they are in the middle of all these crop fields, they might end up, their population would increase. They have no predators over there. In such cases, you could actually safely tranquilize or capture that entire herd and move them to a forest area where they will be more at home, in a place. And it's happened in multiple places. We've assisted several states in such relocation operations, and these relocation operations can be successful. But you have to ensure, I mean, a lot of research will have to go into it beforehand to know the exact nature of the population, what the demographic is of that population, how many bulls, how many females, how many calves, and then how many juveniles, and where would you move them to? Do a site study of the place you're planning to move them to as well beforehand, so that is a sustainable move and the animals don't end up coming back, because people have relocated crocodiles and leopards, 250 kilometers, 400 kilometers, and they come back to exactly the same place.
Wow.
So animals have this incredible homing mechanism which is inbuilt. So they will come back if the location that you move them to is not suiting them adequately.
So a good research has to go into how to relocate and handhold that process as well for the
correct.
Yeah.
In some cases, we even do artificial feeding for some time in the new site to make sure that the animals get stabilized over there before, so that they don't come back to the old site. So yes, these are all options that are available.
Right.
But it's always ideal to find a mechanism by which the farmers are first well educated about the solution, about the problem, about the ecological issues surrounding that species and their immediate region, and then go forward with finding solutions in collaboration with them. Have a participative approach to this whole thing, where the government, the local community, the farming community, and stakeholders like Beejom and Wildlife SOS get involved. So all stakeholders get involved and find solutions that are sustainable and practical to be implemented.
Places like the Himalayan areas, there has been a lot of development there also, and I think lifestyle has completely changed. Fragmentation is there also, lot of deforestation, and as we know, there's a lot of wild animal conflict in the Himalayan countries. Like in Kashmir, there is a lot of bear, issues, I think, between bear and man-animal again. Snow leopards and bears, if I'm not mistaken. What has been your experience as an organization in places like Kashmir? Because I know you have a facility there. So
Wildlife SOS works closely with the Jammu and Kashmir state government and the forest department over there, the wildlife protection department. And, we've been working there for a long time now. We have active MOUs signed with the state government. We've been intervening and assisting them in resolving human-bear conflict primarily. At the moment, we have a snow leopard also in our rescue center, and several brown Asiatic black bears and Himalayan brown bears.
okay.
But the conflict in Kashmir is primarily around a lot of the orchards, the fruit orchards. So the bears come there to scavenge on the falling fruit, the rotting fruit on the ground. And a lot of times some farmers go out to drive them away, which is
I'm
not the
sorry, I believe that's because many paddy fields have now become orchards. Is that true?
Well, also, a lot of the upper reaches, because of the security issues surrounding national
Defense.
security, things
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
there's been a lot of fencing over there
Okay.
to create extra protection for our nation and our borders. That has so when you do fencing, a lot of fencing can fragment your
And
habitat.
corridors get disturbed, I guess.
Correct. And when you
Hmm.
fragment the habitat, then animals find it very hard to, walk through that maze, and
Yeah.
they find it easier to get into the crop fields. And then, like I mentioned earlier, it's a lot of nutrition available in a very small area. They don't have to go digging, acres of land to find food, whereas they can just find their, rotting fruit and whatever else
Yes.
there. And because of that, there is a lot of conflict. And so if people understand, like I said earlier, the behavior, how to behave when you have a wild black bear in your orchard. Step one, do not go out and try to drive it away.
Ah,
Do
right.
not, step two, do not confront the bear. Step three, okay, it's a small amount of loss, but it's not worth your life. Step four, inform the forest department. Step five, ask them to come and intervene and drive the animal away, or drive it away from afar with noise and sound.
Yes.
Try to avoid a direct confrontation with the animal if possible. Similarly, we've now recently been receiving a lot of complaints about brown bears going and raiding the trash cans and the garbage bins and the
They've all
trash
become
piles.
scavengers. Yeah.
They've all
Hmm.
become scavengers, where the pilgrims go through Sonmarg, the
Yes.
Amarnath pilgrims. And so we've just received permission from the government to actually work there extensively. And we hope that, we can find solutions for human bear conflict and solutions to mitigate that conflict.
You won't believe it. This is why I keep saying at the crux of it all lies segregation and composting, you know,
Very
because
true.
unless we manage our waste, not only are animals eating trash, they're eating plastic, they're eating all sorts of rubbish. To just digress, recently we rescued a cow and we did a ruminectomy because the cow died, in a couple of days, and we were wondering why the cow died. And we found around 120 kilos of trash
My
in the
God.
stomach. So it's just we don't realize what we are doing to this planet. All pilgrim centers are usually beautiful environment zones, and we have made them into rubbish bins. I think we need to have a very strict policy on segregation and composting and plastic, first of all, so that this is one. This affects everybody, and I think wildlife is also getting affected by this. Yeah.
Very true. Yeah, I mean, plastic is a very, very dangerous thing, not just for
Yeah.
cows. I mean, there are so many places where you see, in a lot of places, motorcycle cables, like
Yes.
accelerator cables and clutch cables, are used to make snares. And
Yes.
then you see these for wild boar, but you see
Hmm.
a leopard, a tiger, wild dogs, all of them getting caught in these snares and then wandering around with a snare. Many of them
Yeah.
die from those as well.
Horrible.
So,
I talked about leopards just now. So I wanted to ask you, I know you have a leopard facility in Maharashtra, and I know how much activity there is, leopard activity there is, and especially with, like I said, semi-urban spaces and agricultural spaces. So, what are the kind of leopard issues that you encounter, and what do you? I mean, leopards are different. They're not like an elephant or and I think even Uttarakhand has a lot of leopard activity, and very often we have leopard attacks. So, how do people deal with it? How should we deal with it? What should farmers do? And how does it work?
So if you see a leopard in your field, I think best is to just avoid it if you can. If you see a leopard is not going to come after you unless you corner it or you get between a leopard and its cubs. So a lot of farmers end up finding that they have encounters with leopards when they go at 3 a.m. in the morning to switch on their pump, because that's when the
Yeah.
electricity comes. Sometimes at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning is when they have electric connection, and then the supplies comes on. So they walk to the field to that pump house to switch it on. But these days, there are very smart devices which cost, I mean, which are reasonably priced, where you can put a SIM card into a device, and then you send a text message to that device. It switches on the pump, and it costs literally. I mean, it's very, very cheap solution. So a lot of farmers can avoid having to walk in the
that
dark on
encounter.
their own,
Correct. Yes.
and avoid encounters. Secondly, when they do walk, let's say they absolutely have to walk and there is no choice, but they have to absolutely walk, and then all they have to do is carry somebody, either go with someone, go accompanied, or they make a little noise, switch on a little music on their phone, right? Carry a stick in the hand with maybe a couple of bells attached to it or something like that, just announcing their presence as they walk through the field. So once they do that, any leopard which is in the field is going to be saying, oh, somebody's already approaching, let me hide. And the leopard is gone well before they arrive.
It's a very shy animal, right? It's not going to, I mean, that's, yeah.
Extremely shy. It is not waiting to prey on the man. Human beings are not on its list of prey necessarily. So all it's trying to do is find a wild boar or a hare or a large rodent or something like that to eat. But it's not certainly looking for the man. So all we have to do is the farmer or whoever else is going to the field needs to announce his or her, presence, and that they're walking there. And very often when people, go to answer nature's call and they're doing the daily ablutions inside the field, that's when they get attacked. That's because the leopard is thinking that somebody's sitting on their haunches.
So they think
Probably
it's a small animal.
It's assuming that it's a wild boar or something.
Yeah.
And then it goes in and charges, and after it's attacked, it realizes that it's not an animal, and leaves the person and goes. But by then it's probably too late. The damage is done. So always good to have some noise, announce their presence. So a lot of people don't want to announce their presence when they're doing the daily ablutions, which is understandable.
You should, I must tell you something, and as an aside, how much sociologically we have changed as a nation. Leopards attack livestock the most. So I think farmers are, plagued by leopard attacks on their dogs or cows or goats. Earlier, because there were larger families and fragmentation was less and joint families lived together, somebody or the other would keep an eye on the livestock. So their livestock losses were much lesser, although the leopard population was higher. But because today families have become small, there aren't enough people to take care, therefore more livestock is also lost. It's another angle to see how sociologically we are also struggling, So livestock loss is also there thanks to this. In fact, that is another problem that we have because of less buffer zones, overgrazing, livestock for dairies and for meat. We have started raising a lot of cattle and started cutting forest zones to create grazing spaces. A lot of grazing spaces that used to be there in every village has now been acquired for development by the village itself. They've stopped having those free grazing spaces. It has all affected the kind of plan there, and I think therefore we are also looking at from a farming perspective. I think a lot more confrontation between wildlife and livestock for sure, because it's blurred now, the zones, and also I think like I read somewhere, there's a lot of zoonotic illnesses that could be transferred from domestic cattle to wildlife and can actually cause problems for them, and vice versa. So, just like I remember you telling me once how bears get tuberculosis from the humans they live with. So it's like that. I think it's very interesting to see how these can affect things in the long term. So, I think what is the way forward? What is the way forward for this issue? I mean, in the sense, what can we do as a collectively, as organizations or as the government, as state governments, as farming communities together to help minimize? We are on a good path in the sense that we are in a least violent path already as a nation. I think that's lovely. But how can we improve, the minimize the conflict, because it's only growing. And some amount of conservation is surely working because some populations are growing. I think, am I right? Some wild animal population is growing too.
Yes, but also I think the reason some populations are growing is because those animals have become good at adapting to the concrete
Right. Like
spaces,
Neil
and
guys, and monkeys. Right. I get. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they do they do adapt to that. But I
Uh-huh.
think what can make a really good change in the long-term future and sustainable agriculture is
Mm.
for people to be more aware. I think it's really important to educate and spread awareness about these species, and what is the cause, the root cause behind this conflict. Because a lot of people think that these animals just come into my crops
Yeah.
and eat up my crops. But if they go one step behind, you can understand what is the real reason for that conflict.
You understand
And
the animal and its behavior and
correct.
try and work around it. Yeah.
And then also, I think it's really important for all the stakeholders to come together. So, if if, for example, the farming community is in close touch with organizations like Beejom and Wildlife SOS, and with the wildlife forest department or the wildlife department in that area, then it becomes easy for them to interact and bring. So let's say they have this sudden issue of a herd of nilgai inside their forest, inside their agricultural area, and they can reach out to the forest department and make them aware, and they can access crop compensation quicker.
Yes. Yes. That's
So
one
if
thing. Yes.
farming communities are able to recompense themselves for the lost
Fast, quickly.
income quickly, then I think the government, state governments are trying to expedite this process. But I think more engagement is required, and
Yeah.
organizations like Beejom can certainly facilitate expeditious collaboration between the forest department and the local farming communities. And Wildlife is always happy to come in and assist and be of use
Yeah.
in any possible.
No, it's wonderful because I think, Kartick, we are moving towards more organic farming, more natural farming, and that calls for integration. And in fact, it's very interesting in permaculture or natural farming. Or they always advise you to keep at the fringe of your farm a zone that is for wildlife, dedicated to wildlife. And it's very interesting on our farm, for instance, because we do integrative farming, we plant trap crops to invite birds, invite butterflies, bees. We have a pollinator garden, and to some extent, invite all other animals too. And in our own way, we've managed to control our issues as well, by and large. We have lots of dogs, which are all rescued. And although we didn't intend to, we have realized that played an enormous role in keeping away monkeys and other predators. I mean, not other, fellows who will come in for our crops, boars, for instance. We have had an occasion where an entire crop of potato was eaten by wild boars. So that has now got solved because of our dogs. And the cats have solved the problem of our rodents. We have 6 cats, all of whom lazily lie around on all spots in our farm. And of course, we have sterilized and vaccinated all of them. So we make sure we also control their population, and they're all rescued. And so it's wonderful to give rescues a home. And they in turn, which is why tell everyone that the animals run Beejom, not us. We couldn't do it without them. And even the geese play a role. It's very nice. The flock of geese walk around the farm, strut around, honking away. I think, I think left to themselves, I think they all have a role to play. And that's how we've managed to control, and of course, learned a lot about snakes. We have nilgai coming in. We have done some kind of fencing, like that. We've put a lot of lemon along our borders, karonda along our borders. So these are thorny plants that are also giving us a produce. So that's helped us a lot in keeping, stray cattle and stuff out. But having said that, we still have our ragi eaten once in a way. And like an old farmer said on the farm, when you sow your seeds, keep at least 10% of seeds factored in for your insects and birds to eat, and with your harvest too. So I think we have to remember, we have to share. that has to come naturally. We can't hope to take all the harvest or live only for ourselves. So I think because the future is going to be like that, this kind of conversations are truly important for us all to understand how we can integrate and still live peacefully. So what I would actually like is for us to do this again with more, maybe more specific topics. There's so much to discuss. It's hard to cover in one conversation, surely. Like you, when I sent you the questions, you thought it'll take 5 hours, right? So you're absolutely right. I think I overestimated myself. So,
No, it's a
so
fascinating topic, and I think you probably have hundreds of questions coming in as
yeah,
well from the audience,
yes,
and
yes,
each component has so many layers within it, and as you
yes,
unravel each layer like an onion, really,
yes,
you start seeing more and more solutions and more challenges, and so sometimes this can, something like this can take multiple sessions. So we've
yes,
gone through almost 1.5 hours effortlessly
yes,
just chatting about this in just a
yeah.
few questions.
No, it's
So yeah,
been
I think
wonderful.
there's a lot of work ahead. If are there any other questions that you think people have asked you that
Uh,
need to be discussed?
just a minute.
We
Somebody
have 8 minutes
says,
left.
um,
We can always do it in the next one if you don't have any immediate questions.
yeah, how to identify snakes? Somebody wants us to discuss very soon. I think snakes, there are 3 questions.
I
And
think, maybe we
role of,
should do a separate one on snakes, perhaps.
yeah,
It might be
hurting
quite.
beehives. Hurting beehives is a question. How are government related bodies or animal associations helping is a third question. I
So anyway,
think,
with beehives, perhaps, Aparna, you can maybe explain to people how important the role of bees are.
yes,
People are scared
as
of bees.
pollinators.
They look at beehives and they immediately want to burn the beehives, smoke the bees away, drive them away, and that's
No,
not really a
it's the,
desirable
yeah.
thing.
The minute you
Maybe you
see a,
can talk about. I
yeah,
think
yeah.
you
I
know.
keep
Uh,
saying that the minute you see a cow, you say, how much milk does the cow give? Similarly, when you look at a beehive, you cannot think beyond the honey. And sadly, the bees have a far greater role to play. And I think we need to know that how vital they are to our ecology. And it's so beautiful and rare to have this beehive, a natural beehive. And so there's a lot of conversations of relocation of beehives. People, the first thing they ask is how to relocate a beehive. So maybe we could do a session on bees at some point.
Yeah, we should do that certainly because
Yeah,
people need to understand that without bees, we will not have any vegetables, fruits, flowers,
yeah,
and we'll just become a dead, planet. And
yes,
I think people, I think, largely underestimate the role of bees in our lives
yes.
and in our environment and in our ecosystem.
So we've discussed nilgais, we've discussed what do you call leopards, snakes, and done a overview of most animals. I think birds requires an entire conversation. But to put it very briefly, birds are and I must say that the move to organic farming is also vital to wildlife. As a parting note, because chemical farming is one of the main reasons why wildlife is dying. uh, you know Bird species are dying, bee species, they are kind of reduced, the population of bees in our and therefore we are relying on artificial ways of growing food. So I think it's vital that we grow chemical free. That's one of the main conditions that we should start using, just to help wildlife. And it's, in fact, I don't see a conflict. Like, I'd like to, as a parting note, say that there is no conflict. I think biodiversity is very important, for soil to grow, for crops to grow, for forests to grow, and medicinal plants to grow. I think if we don't keep the links safe, we'll soon be in a lot of trouble. We already are. So much of our wildlife is gone. So much is extinct. We don't even know. Maybe it's going by the day. I'm not sure. And so much of forest cover going. It can't be very good for us. So I'm just hoping, Kartick, that I pray for lovely organizations such as yours to keep on with your great work. And you've inspired Beejom in so many ways. Every day, we are constantly thinking how to work with nature, and that's one of the prime reasons we had this talk today. Thank you so much for being with us. I think I've learned more
No,
than
no,
anyone else.
I
Yeah.
learn as well every single day. I think the minute we think we've learned too much, then I think we cease to exist. I think it's important
Yeah.
for us to continue learning and growing every day. Some people have been asking about monkeys in fruit orchards
Yeah.
constantly. I think, for monkeys, to control monkeys in fruit orchards, I think the only solution is to really either change your cropping pattern or create some kind of a protective mechanism using solar fencing, by which the monkeys don't climb over the fence and come in. And
Yeah.
if you have an efficient solar fence, then it's possible. And people can email Beejom, or they can email us at info@wildlifesos.org if you have specific questions. You can email in. What is your email address, Aparna, that people can send an email to Beejom if they want?
I'll just type it on this. Just a minute.
Yeah, and I think some of our team members who are also on Insta Live could possibly put in some of our email addresses that people could write to if they want specific answers or have specific queries that we've not been able to address because of paucity of time. People have been asking about some elephant issues also, but I think this is about
No, this
human
is a
wildlife.
big topic. Yeah, yeah. So we need to maybe address it by the region, saying, yeah, because every region seems to have its own peculiar issues, right? So, yes, the Western Ghats is one feature by itself. So, yes. So, I think the first we should do is snakes, because that seems to be the most common kind of question that comes our way.
One of my favorite topics too. So
Somebody asked about scorpions, by the way. They
yes,
said they
but
have a
I
lot
don't
of.
think we have a. We see the thing with scorpions is India does not have any scorpions that can actually kill adult human beings. So I don't even know that we had conflict with scorpions. I mean, you only if you sit on a scorpion, yes, you will have a very painful backside for a while. But
Yeah.
other than that,
Yeah,
scorpions
yeah.
are incredible.
They don't kill.
Yeah, I don't think people die from scorpion bites in
Yeah.
India. Similarly, we have no venomous lizards in India. A lot of people think lizards are venomous and dangerous and things like that. A lot of the farmers see monitor lizards in their fields and they think that gohera hai,
Panic.
go hai, ye hai, wo hai. They think it's a Komodo dragon or a dinosaur or something like that, but it's not. I mean, they're harmless animals. And again, monitor lizards, like snakes, are very important friends of farmers because they get into those burrows and eat rodents as well. So they can
Do
be
you
a
know we have a monitor lizard family? We have a container in one corner of the farm, and we have a monitor lizard family living underneath. And in the afternoons in summer, you can actually see one walk down the road as if he owns the place. It's really cute. Yeah, I know. They don't do anything unless you're like, directly
They
going and.
they
Yeah,
don't. I mean, they will not even unless you corner them. They will not even be hostile or
yeah,
even try to defend themselves. They just want to run away from you.
yeah.
And I've seen places. I've seen them actually walk through markets looking for. They're just scavengers, really. They're looking for food. They're not
Yeah.
looking for anything else, and they're not looking to harm people at all. So
Sometimes, yeah, we've seen him, I presume it's him or a her. We've seen the monitor lizard on top of our chicken coop, which is scary. But what we have done is we've protected our chicken coop very well so that he can't get in. But yes, so they do come for the eggs or the,
yeah, they
yeah,
love eggs, and if you have
yeah,
baby chicks or something, they
yes,
might be
yes,
interested in that.
they come.
Also, the fecal matter, the droppings can be because of the strong aroma from
Ah,
droppings. It attracts them. So
right,
he might be just interested in scavenging. You know,
right.
uh, so that's probably the reason. But anyway, I think it's been lovely
Yes.
talking about this. We've gone through 1.5 hours effortlessly.
Yes. Thanks, Kartick. Thanks a lot for being here. And thanks, everyone, for joining in and listening in to us. We hope to do this again quite soon. We'll keep you posted. And God bless all of you.
Thank you. Thanks, Aparna. Bye.
Bye. Bye.